What is going on, New York Giants fans? D-Illa here. So we got the 2024 draft 1 week away at this point. Wanted to talk about it a bit and tell you guys the direction I think this team is going to go in. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to try to pander to the fan base. And I'm not going to try to sit here and tell you things that I don't necessarily believe myself. So I'm going to shoot it to you straight. So right now, going into this draft, we got pick number 6. I honestly don't think this team is going to draft a quarterback. I really don't. I think Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, at this point in time, they're too far in with Daniel Jones. They made the decision to sign him. They made their bed. Now they have to lay in it. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll right now currently don't have the luxury of waiting 2 to 3 seasons to see if their newly acquired quarterback works out. Especially with Daniel Jones' contract and the fact that he will be the starter in 2024. I mean, that's 1 year right there that's basically out the door when it comes to your newly acquired quarterback. So you're going to have to wait past this season, if you draft a quarterback, to even see what you have in the guy. So I think they have to continue the course with the plan that they've laid out and stick with Daniel Jones. This is not something that I want to see happen, but based on the situation those two are in, I think that's the direction that they are going to take this team because they don't have any other choice. So, with pick number 6, I think they're going wide receiver. I honestly think they're going wide receiver. They're going to take Odunze or they're going to take Malik Nabers. Now, me, myself, I'm more of a fan of Malik Nabers, and that's not saying I would be displeased with a Odunze pick. I like Odunze also, but I do think Malik Nabers is that much better of a wide receiver over a guy like Odunze. I think he is the prototypical wide receiver that you're looking for. There's nothing that guy can't do well on the football field. Yes, his contested catch rate isn't as high as a guy like Odunze, but to me, he's that much better than everybody else to the point where he's not catching the ball in the traffic that Odunze is, because his routes are that much crisper and he's that much more explosive as an athlete. I've liked Malik Nabers from the start. The first time I put on his tape, that's all I had to see. I had to watch it one time, and I was like, this guy can play in this league. This guy has the ability to turn into a wide receiver like a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase, or Devontae Adams. He can have that kind of impact in this league. Now, I think Odunze can also be a very good wide receiver in this league. I think Odunze can turn into a wide receiver similar to a guy like Hakeem Nicks. I've heard a lot of people try to compare Odunze to a guy like Plexico Burress. Plexico Burress was damn near 6'6". He was 6'5", but he's probably pushing close to 6'6", and had the wingspan of a freaking pterodactyl. Like, Odunze doesn't look anything like Plexico Burress. He reminds me more of Hakeem Nicks, minus the XXL hands. You know, Nicks could catch the ball thrown anywhere. Just snatch it right out of the air with those big old paws he had. Now, Odunze is very similar to Hakeem Nicks. And again, I wouldn't have any issue if this team drafted him. I just think Nabers is, to me, cream of the crop when it comes to the wide receiver class. I think Malik Nabers is going to be one of the best wide receivers in this league in a very short amount of time. Now, that could all depend where he ends up also. If he ends up with the Giants playing with Daniel Jones, a quarterback that completely refuses to throw the ball down the field because he doesn't have time, and he misses wide receivers when they're wide open even when he does have time, you know, his progress may definitely be stunted. So, yeah, I think we're going wide receiver with that 6th pick. And the thing that worries me about this draft is I honestly think this team is going to draft based on need, which is what I don't believe they need to do. I think this team just needs to work on bringing talent to the roster, just elevating the overall talent of the roster itself. And I still think they're going to draft based on need because they put all this stock now into the defensive line, and now they're looking at the secondary, which they know is a big-time weakness of this football team. And they're going to try to make improvements to it. So I will not be surprised if they devote at least 2 draft picks to this secondary. So if we take a wide receiver with our first pick and then we devote 2 picks to our secondary, that's 3 picks right there. We've only got 6 picks. How much better are you realistically making this football team? Those 2 corners that you draft, you'll be lucky if 1 out of the 2 actually pan out. Because as we all know, every single one of these draft picks is not going to hit. I just don't like where I see this draft heading. I don't think this team is in any position where they need to be reaching for players just based on need. And considering where Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are currently right now heading into their 3rd year, they need to produce results. They need to prove that that first season wasn't a fluke. to save their jobs down the road, to provide themselves some kind of job security, at least with this team. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. Sometimes these GMs and these head coaches, they're not necessarily doing what's best for the team. It almost becomes like a selfish act on their part. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are going to do what they may think is the best line of action for their career. We saw this with Dave Gettleman in his final season with the New York Giants. He spent all this money, spent all these resources just to try to save his job. And it didn't work out for him. And he left this team in complete disarray. Now, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll aren't at that point yet. They're going into year number 3. But we all know in year number 4, that's when the dominoes really start to fall. And they're not that far away from that. Because if they were doing what's best for the team, they would strongly consider drafting a quarterback. Because this team needs a quarterback. And when you have a draft class like this that is filled with quarterback talent, your starting quarterback currently on your roster who has the amount of doubts and issues that a guy like Daniel Jones has, you have to strongly consider taking a quarterback in a class that is as loaded at that position if you were, honest to God, that concerned about the future of this football team. But I don't believe they are. I think they're more concerned with saving their jobs at this point. So what are they going to try? What are they going to try to do? They're going to try to draft based on need and try to make this team, with the limited amount of talent that it currently has, they're going to try to make it a contender. Even though in the back of their mind, they probably know that it's not going to work out because this team is miles and miles and miles away from being teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, the Detroit Lions, the San Francisco 49ers, the Green Bay Packers, and the NFC. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you. I'm just telling you like it is. This team ain't even close to any of those teams. And a lot of people out there seem to believe that, this defensive line is just going to come out and dominate. Let me tell you something, man. These quarterbacks, based on the way our secondary is right now, and you can say what you want about Dane Belton and Jason Pinnock. Say what you want. They're inexperienced players. They really haven't proven themselves. Pinnock's had some good games. Dane Belton really hasn't proved anything. You lost to Dory Jackson. Darnay Holmes hasn't exactly been a cornerback that you can write home about for the majority of his career. You can have the greatest defensive line in the world, man, but if you don't have the secondary pieces to actually hold these wide receivers in check long enough for your defensive line to get to that quarterback, those quarterbacks are going to eat your defense alive. I don't care how much talent you have on that line. Like, quarterbacks are not going to have to sit back there in that pocket for 5 to 6 seconds at a time when they could just kill this team with little short 5 to 10 yard passes. They could dink and dunk their way down the field because they're going to have legit mismatches at these corner spots when they're not throwing the ball at a guy like Deonte Banks. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Just think back to that Packers game, after the boat trip. What did the Green Bay Packers do to us when Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie got hurt in the slot? They peppered the slot. The rest of that game, as soon as DRC went down, that's all they did. They peppered the slot, just ate us up all the way down the field. Aaron Rodgers just tore us up. They're going to find that mismatch. And that defensive line ain't going to be able to do anything about it. And we're not even going to get into the rushing defense, this 29th ranked rushing defense from last year. We now have 2 defensive ends that are basically carbon copies of what Osi Umenyiora used to be in the run game. Osi Umenyiora couldn't play the run to save his life. And Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau are basically the same players. They're good pass rushers, but they struggle mightily against the run. That's just another issue we're going to have to tackle. So I don't like the direction that things are going right now. I really don't. I've said, videos back that I feel like this team, honest to God, needs to just start over from scratch and get themselves a quarterback in here. And I'm not saying just because they draft a quarterback, the quarterback's going to solve all the issues. He's not. But when you have quarterbacks in a class like this, where there's a lot of talent to choose from, it's probably a wise decision to bring your quarterback in when, again, your starting quarterback that you currently have has the amount of doubts that he has and the amount of issues that he has. And nobody can tell me that he doesn't have issues. The man does struggle to read coverages. There's no way anybody out there can sit there and tell me he doesn't struggle to read coverages. He misses wide receivers that are wide open. He has trouble calling out protection at the line, setting his lineman up in the best possible spot to give him protection. He's had issues doing this throughout his career. Like Daniel Jones, I'm not going to sit here and act like Daniel Jones has had the perfect situation, because he hasn't. But I'm not going to sit here and act like Daniel Jones hasn't contributed to the bad situation himself.